Thank you. It's really good to be here with you all today, and let me just say that this morning is really just awesome to be able to spend some time with you all this morning, and just to feel the heartbeat of the wonderful people in this industry, and to just to hear that ethic that we've always held dear in our nation of God, family, country. So important. When I was first running for office, we called it faith, family, and freedom. But it's just so important. That ethic is to our survival, frankly, as a nation. We are blessed and we are unique as a nation in that we understand that the liberties that we share are really rooted in faith and the understanding that they aren't a grant from government, but they're a gift from God. And I often said the glory of the American Revolution wasn't a new government, it was a free people. And so we had a free people who instituted a government, but the essential role of government, a lot of times people say it's to keep us safe, and certainly that is an important role. That's why we have a military and such. But the most important job of our federal government is to keep us free. And in everything that we do in Washington right now, that's something that's always on the forefront of my mind, is making sure that what we do is protect the environment for the American people to do their best work, for the American families to thrive, and that kind of underlies everything that we say and everything that we're trying to accomplish under there. It is really an honor to be with you all today. First of all, let me just say, I know I'm not going to teach you anything about peanut farming today. When I was running, I would often tell people I'm not running because I think I know everything. My job is to listen. The first task of a representative, I think, is to listen. And so when I come to something like this, my job is to hear from you, know what we can do, and especially next year as we're looking toward the Farm Bill, and we're working to develop that right now, to be able to get your input and carry that to Washington and do what we can. I mean, we can study the principles and understand what we're trying to protect and preserve in our nation, but the intricacies of the policy, we need your input. And now is a really great time for us to be hearing from you about all those things that need to happen. Obviously, it's been a few years since we've worked on the Farm Bill, and I'm thankful, frankly, that it's coming up next term, not this term. I serve on the Oversight Committee as well, and the and the Ag Committee. And if y'all have spent any time watching the news, you can probably look at some of the stuff that happens in the Oversight Committee. And I was looking forward to the Ag Committee to kind of be a reprieve in a sense, because typically that's been a bipartisan committee, very policy oriented and driven. And this term has been a little different. And I could just give you a couple examples. We had last year, I think it was we had a debate in the Ag Committee on naming July Blueberry Month. Now, I was not opposed to that for sure, but we had the debate, I think it was in September or August. And so we spent a lot of time in the Ag Committee talking about naming July, past tense, and just July of that one year. There was another with everything going on that you're facing right now. When I travel around and I've talked to everybody, ranchers, farmers, whatever their commodity they're growing, you hear about, okay, we need a workforce. Okay, we got input prices are going through the roof. The energy policies that we're facing right now are leading to high gas prices and to high diesel prices and fertilizer prices and then pesticides and all those challenges on input costs that we're facing right now. And we had a hearing with Secretary Vilsack, and then we were talking about electric tractors was the topic of the committee. And so for the longest part of this term, we're finally starting to have hearings based on the Farm Bill going forward. But for up till really just about a month ago, it was that kind of Green New Deal objective running everything committee. And I told him in committee, I said, I've talked to a lot of people who are growing stuff in a lot of different areas of the country. I've yet to have somebody come up to me and say, if only I had an electric tractor. I've had some people come up to me and say, if I could find parts to the tractor that I have, that would be really, really wonderful right now. And that's kind of the context. And it's, again, maybe one day we'll get to electric tractors. I have nothing against electric tractors, but right now we're at such a critical time in our nation. We have some real needs that we need to address. And indeed, as we look even in the short term now of some of the challenges that the world is about to face, because of some of the policies that we've seen advocated. We will probably do okay in the United States, but we are already starting to see in some countries, certainly poorer countries who are less advantaged, food shortages and everything that becomes, the turmoil that becomes in a nation when that happens. And all that to say that national security, food security is national security. I think it was a former ag chair who, before my time, who once asked the question, he said, how long can a submarine stay underwater? And the answer is, of course, until they run out of food. So we've advanced in technology and all those kind of things, but it's so important that we take that anecdotal lesson, but we'll also apply it to our economy. If the last 2 years haven't showed us how important supply chains are and how important certainly essential elements of our economy are based or near-shored, if not onshore, here in the United States, we have to maintain a very strong agricultural base in the United States. And right now, there are a lot of factors that go beyond just what you deal with on a daily basis or on an annual basis of just the normal challenges of you can do everything right in a season and still everything's still dependent on the weather, which none of us, in spite of my name being Cloud, I cannot control. So I'm certainly very mindful of that. I know it's been a pleasure as GT's become chair. Of course, we enjoyed having our fellow Texan, Mike Conaway, lead the last farm bill. I still have his number on speed dial, I can assure you, but GT's just been doing an excellent job, really, of getting geared up. He's been to my district, he's been all over Texas. I know he's been going all over the country to make sure that we approach this with getting input from every single commodity group we can, making sure that we address the fact that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach from us as a nation, and we have to. I really enjoyed the breakfast this morning, in part because of y'all understand the fact that things are different in different regions, and we have to, as we come up with solutions, as the federal government, understand that we have to appreciate that as we approach things. One of the big things that has been new, and honestly has been kind of odd, and I don't see a clock anywhere, so okay, I think. This term has been how the Green New Deal aspect has kind of attached itself to the Ag Committee. And for me, that was kind of like an oddity in the sense that, you know, where do you get the Green New Deal from? The green of the Green New Deal, if not from the ag industry, right? And so, yet we continue to see an effort to really bring a top-heavy approach and regulation and such to the Ag Committee. This is something that I'm very much working to make sure that stays as light as possible. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but the main one and the thing that I continue to drive over and over again is the very simple thing that the American ag worker is doing this the best in the world. And so with every generation, we're going to continue to try to get better. We're going to continue to try to improve. And again, this morning's breakfast was a great example, I thought, of how y'all are coming together and looking at best practices and what can we do to get better and with each generation. But we, from the federal level, have to understand that there's already a built-in incentive to protect the soil, to do things right, to be more sustainable, to do all these kind of things. And a lot of times what happens when government steps in to try to fix a solution is we may look at the best innovations of today and may come in and mandate something, but we'll mandate what is the best solution of the day. And then it's locked in for the next 20 years, and you lose that leading edge of innovation that has made us the leader in the world going forward. And so we're already seeing what happens when you have high input costs, when you have lower food production, of course, Russia and Ukraine and such, and we have some unique challenges going on right now. In Texas, we have a year with very, very, very little rain, and so we have, you know, those issues that we're dealing with right now. But all the importance of how important it is that we continue to make sure that this is very much driven by the industry and not the government sweeping in to try to save the day and lock you into some practices that will eventually lead to us not continuing to lead the world. So this is kind of the approach that I bring to the conversation, a lot of it. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about climate emergency. I was on the oversight committee and the chair came and once said, we're in a national climate emergency. And when it came my turn to talk, I corrected her and said, you know, if there's a climate emergency, it's not a national one. The environment doesn't stop at our borders, and so we've got to begin to look at these sort of things in context and realize that if we're doing this better than the rest of the world, the solution is for us to take up more of the world's market as possible. And so for me, it's constantly a discussion on what can we do to continue to advance and to take up more of a product. Trade, to me, becomes an essential part of us reaching these goals and us continuing to lead in the world and find new markets. We've had some delays with this administration in ensuring that the trade deals that were passed in the last one are continuing to be followed up on. Just recently, we finally got a name for a trade representative, but haven't seen a lot of action yet. So we are working to do what we can to continue to push that forward. Just to give you I thought this was kind of fun when it came to some of the climate. I thought I'd read you some of the climate, because everybody talks about a climate emergency. Here's some of the headlines over the last several years. There's a new ice age coming by 2020 or 2030. There's no insight to the 30-year cooling trend. This is around this late 70s. This is what the headlines were going to be. Obviously different than what we're seeing today. There was predictions that by 1972, oil would be depleted in 20 years. This one I thought was fun. Said Manhattan will be underwater by 2015. New York City's west side will be underwater by 2019. And I know a lot of you are really disappointed that did not happen. But again, it's important that we put these things in perspective, in context, and understand that, yes, we want to be good stewards of the environment. Yes, there's a built-in incentive for us to manage the land well and to be good stewards. But to let an emergency dialogue drive bad practices that disadvantage the American worker, that literally lead to food shortages around the world, that create instability, that's the wrong direction. And so we need to continue to maintain what has worked and what has led America to be the leader in the world. There is a stat that people will point to, and it says, like, from the 1990s till now, greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture have increased 10% in the last 30 years. And that's true. And so you'll have environmental enthusiasts come and want to reverse that trend. But the problem with that is, along with that trend in the United States, that 10% increase in emissions have led to a 136 increase of production. So we're getting a lot of bang for the buck when it comes to how the American ag worker innovates. And we have to be very careful about trying to reverse that 10% trend in greenhouse gases if it is connected to that 136% increase in production. Just up to a couple years ago, you see a lot of bad news and a lot of good things don't happen. Sometimes you look at young people these days and they're being taught that this world is a horrible place, and certainly this nation is a horrible place, when the fact is, yes, we're not perfect, but you are being born into the best the world has ever been, in a sense. We've seen in the last several years poverty decrease dramatically. We've seen less wars, in spite of the fact that there are wars, but we've seen less wars and less people dying from wars. We're at a low of the last 100 years of people dying from weather events. So just a couple years ago, we were for the first time in history producing more food than the world needed. That's a fact that most people don't know. Now, there's some challenges with governments and regions and getting the food where it needs to go, and infrastructure needs and corruption in certain governments and those kind of things. So there's definitely challenges, but it's important that we understand there were some things that were working that we have to be careful not to break as we try to continue to move forward. And so one thing that's really, really important to me in all of this, and I've really appreciated hearing this from you, is just understanding where that America is a good place and that's worth preserving. I've enjoyed last night we had the chance to hang out and talk, and then this morning being with you all and hearing just a pro-America. When I spend as much time as I do in DC, oddly enough, that should be the greatest pro-America place ever. But tragically, there's so much coming right now against that faith that our nation was founded on, against the family, to break down and to redefine what a family unit means, which when I was growing up, people would talk about the family unit being the building block of a great and healthy society. It's that first place where you learn good authority and leadership and how to care for people and all those sorts of things. And then, of course, that producing a great country. It was interesting. I was doing some research on kind of the trends of what's happening right now, and it was about 2 or 3 decades ago, the intelligence community the U.S. intelligence community put out a report to talk about what they believe the trends over the next 25 years would be. And they said the greatest trend in American history, or in the world history, is happening. The greatest shift of power and wealth in the history of world is happening right now. And what's happening is there's a transition from the power and wealth of Western countries moving to Eastern countries. And they said that this trend could not be stopped. It was virtually unstoppable. It was a virtual certainty that it was going to happen and continue to happen. And they said it was happening for 2 reasons. One, we were moving manufacturing overseas and production overseas, and we were moving oil and gas revenues overseas. And to me, that's like, well, it seems very simple. Let's reverse those trends. Let's keep production base at home. Let's keep our food supply base at home. Let's bring oil and gas revenues back. And indeed, when we began to see that trend just a couple years ago, it literally led to peace deals in the world. When the United States has the strength to sit at the negotiating table, whether it be trade or whether it be any other national security issue that's going on, it all came back to our energy policies. And we know that the energy policies are immensely tied to the input costs that you have to deal with each and every day. I bring that up because a lot of what's happening right now and the struggle that we see and the divide that we see in Washington, D.C., a lot of times people will think the greatest divide is between Republicans and Democrats, and I'm not saying there aren't some issues there. Certainly, you know, I'm in that world every single day, but really the greatest divide in Washington right now is the trend between globalism and Americanism, if I can put it that way. And so you have a lot of industries now and even corporations that have bought into this globalist idea of redistribution of wealth, really where we're taking the wealth and power and influence that was in the Western world that our founders fought for, that our grandparents and parents have fought for, and it's transitioning to Eastern countries. And so it's important for us to understand that's going on and to make sure that we're doing what we can to put those things in context, because there's a lot of companies that I've talked to, a lot of industries, certainly major corporations that now we view them, the American people, as, oh, these are great American success stories, and they're kind of ambassadors on the world economy of American values. They oftentimes don't see themselves that way anymore. They kind of see themselves as having outgrown the American ethic, and they're now a global company, and they would view the values that we hold dear, those principles that are in the Declaration of Independence and Constitution, as kind of like the local regulations for operating in the same way, like, hey, if we're going to operate in India, we have to, you know, figure out how to do business there. Well, this is how we do business in the United States. And so it's so important that we realize, obviously we have a work to do in Washington, D.C., but we all have a work to do in every single boardroom that we're in, every single meeting that we're in our church and community groups. And everywhere I go, I just try to remind people that we are a nation of the people, by the people, for the people. And for me personally, my faith has driven my service a lot. And I at times, you know, when I'm speaking in churches or whatever, will remind people that our founding government, when I was deciding to run, I had often told the story, encouraging other people to be involved, of Benjamin Franklin leaving the Constitutional Convention, and he was asked, do we have a republic or do we have a monarchy? And he said, we have a republic if we can keep it. And that reminded me constantly that as Americans, we all have a role to play. We all have something to do. And so I want to thank you for being involved and being a part of that and coming to events like this and being engaged on the issues, because that's really, really what it takes. And I certainly value your input, truly do, and hope you feel free to reach out to me in our office and provide us input as we look forward to important legislation. But also that our faith requires not just something out of us, but it requires everything out of us. And some of you know, this was not a career planned path for me. I actually graduated from Oral Roberts University and went to work for a church, and I thought I was going to be doing that for a while, and was asked to run, and initially said no some years ago, and then my wife and I prayed about it and felt like it was something that we were supposed to do. But if you'll indulge me for a minute with one little like Sunday school lesson, but there's a story of King Hezekiah in Scripture, and King Hezekiah was noted to be one of the good kings of Israel. but later on in his years, he invited a delegation from Babylon to come, and he showed him basically where all the storehouses were, where all the treasures were, and all the weapons and such. And then when he left, the prophet came to him and he said, what have you done? Did you show them this delegation? He's like, yeah, I showed them everything. And the prophet said, because of what you've done, everything that your founders and your forefathers have stored up will one day be taken away. And your nation will go into poverty, into captivity. And if that word wasn't tragic, his response was even more tragic when he said, what you've said is good, because at least it won't happen in my lifetime. I talked about this on the House floor, encouraging Congress just a few weeks ago, that God forbid we be the Congress that says, oh, my political career is secure, but we'll pass this on, or my family's okay, or we're okay now, but the future. What being American has always been us to be able to have those liberties, to share those liberties, to work hard, those things that you embrace every single day, getting up, working hard, getting a fair wage, and being able to pass on a better life for your kids and grandkids. That's something that I'm working to protect and preserve every single day. I know you are as well. And I cannot tell you how important it is to me. All of that is connected to exactly not only the ethic that I see when I come and get to meet with y'all, but what you're doing every day in that being tied to the essence of what you do in the ag industries and being growing in the communities that you're working in. It's so important that we continue to protect and preserve that. And I know I'll be working hard on that as we go into the next term. I know GT will and as well. And we're already gearing up. So please continue to reach out to us. I thank you very much for the opportunity to come here and to learn and to spend some time with y'all. It's really been an honor and a privilege. Thank y'all. God bless.